makes me sound bassy. Anyone ever see the skit on Saturday Night Live where they asked Barry White like what the sexiest words were that he could say with his big voice? Have you ever seen this? Gingivitis. So good. Yeah, I'm cozy. I was hoping you'd be in the room, Dan. I've got a call out to you in this one.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here. My name is Mary Elizabeth, and I am the Director of Curriculum and Development, or Curriculum and Professional Development for Games for Change. And we, on behalf of Games for Change, we're just very excited to have all of you here. If you have not heard that yet, we appreciate you coming and sharing all of your knowledge and learning from all of our experts. In the next talk, we'll explore how we might architect a public media system built for games. One grounded in interactivity, near zero distribution costs, and rapid data-driven iteration, all while building on the legacy of Joan, Ganz, Cooney, and PBS. And this is our speaker, David Gagnon, and I will let him introduce himself and where he's from. Thank you very much. Let's welcome David.
Thank you. Gosh, I already love this size room. That big room, that seems scary. This feels good. I'm glad to get this time with you. Yeah, so I've got a hopefully a compelling call that's up here right now. Yesterday I heard from some beloved colleagues that it could be seen as bristling was the word. I want to minimize the bristle. I want to maximize on community building in this time. But I also want to be a bit prophetic in the classic sense of the word. I realize that I've got 2 or 3 large national projects right now that I'm part of, and it really was this morning that I realized that the message that is like working its way through my whole career right now isn't anything clever. It's like there's no novelty in it. There's no newness in it. It's just these major social organizations and a call back to the vision that formed them. It's a call to reform, not a call for something novel. So it's really with that I want to start this conversation very respectfully and with excitement. I am really curious about the idea of a public and what the public is. It's an idea that just runs deeply philosophically through the work that I do at the University of Wisconsin. Because of my wife, find a lot of inspiration in writers like Hegel, and then more recently, there's another conference called LACK, L-A-C-K, and seeing the kind of film theory folks that are digging into really theories of psychology and sociology. Okay, so with that in the way, if you want to look me up and you have a laptop, you can go to my website and be distracted while I'm yapping. So every good story needs to establish some stakes. And this is easy. As you know, this is a pretty unique time to be alive. And I would offer that it is novel, that there are actually some new novel challenges that we're facing. And the one that I've most recently seen articulated is that we have a crisis of epistemology. We don't have the skills, we don't have the discourses, we don't have the practices to actually know what is real. And we don't have an agreed upon framework in which to discover reality, to describe reality, to argue about the different things we see about reality. It is a crisis. The best way for me to think about it is it's almost like when we went from the Middle Ages into modernity, it's like all of a sudden we're like, nah, let's go back. Like we're actually at that level of civic breakdown at this point. The very idea of truth is challenged, just in the most fundamental ways. Okay, goal 1, solve crisis of epistemology. Goal 2, we have a collapse of any sort of civic literacy. So people disagree. That's what organizations are. That's what communities are. If you've ever been with another person, ever, you'll know that they're not exactly the same. But there are skills, like actual practicable skills and values. We know what the opposite is, scapegoating, us and theming. I spend a lot of time in Northern Ireland, and I find it to be a prototype in the late 70s and 80s of what we're facing right now, where you can say one thing, I'm a Protestant, and by that one thing, everybody knows everything else you believe. And you can do the same thing right now. You can say one thing, and it's cliche. All your other systems, by default. That's problematic. Okay, problem 2 to solve. Like increasing civic literacy and civic discourse and civic practices. So those are, I would argue, fundamental epistemic and civil threats, and they're existential. Like this is the ballgame that we're playing right now. So let's look to Fred Rogers. And I just love this quote. I've spent a lot of time in a lot of crazy places. I've traveled around. My in-laws lived in Namibia, in Africa, starting schools. That's what got me into education. I've spent significant time in Southeast Asia and Latin America. I've been all through India. I've dined with, cooked for, served, cleaned the poor in the poorest possible poor places. And one of the things that you will see in the poorest of the poor places of the world is the helpers. And I would argue that one of the things we get wrong as the wealthy, I mean, I literally took a lift because I was running late this morning. One of the things we get wrong is that we think we've got something figured out about community. So this attitude, though, of the helpers is really important because one of the other things I've been experiencing is that when you have a young person who goes to science class these days and they encounter some of the things that are talked about in science class, it's become the new church of 1980. It's science class is where you go to hear from the left about Armageddon, the apocalypse, the end of the world, over and over and over. And it's creating these like anxieties that we have. So I love this quote because even with our group here, I want to spin it around a little bit and be like, okay, I know it's serious, but let's get to work, right? Let's be the helpers. Okay, one of the helpers, Joan Cooney. Do people know this paper? I actually don't know in this community. No, you don't. A couple people do. Okay, so required reading. I mean, seriously, it's so good. Let me set the stage with a story just a little bit. 1960s television. Okay, so television, we did not have the internet, okay, just for anybody. And when you're trying to communicate without the internet, one of the main ways you do that is through broadcast, right? You set up a radio tower, and it costs lots and lots of money, and you have a staff that run it, and it's complicated to do. And if you grew up in a time of broadcast television, as I did, does anyone remember like the click, click, click? Okay, good. I'm on the hunt for more of those, by the way. I've got 2 right now. And click, click, click meant that there were like limited channels. And for me, I grew up in a suburb of Chicago. I think I had about 6 channels I could get. It's the major networks, ABC, NBC. And then what Joan Cooney was arguing for is that this device could be useful. But in 1960s, what was happening is that there were only for-profit public networks. And what that means is that every single thing that was put on television needed to be financially viable by the market. Okay, so what works in the market? If you want to nail capitalism, you just want to win capitalism. What do? You sell cigarettes to children. It's the perfect strategy, right? And you get them hooked. It's a perfect market. And that's what they did. They sold cigarettes to children. If there was children's programming, it would have ads like this, because that's how it was paid for, because no one's paying for children's programming. Why would you do that? You use children's programming to attract children, use children to convince their parents to buy stuff. And the people that are buying stuff are the people that are funding the programming. Get it? Okay. So this was a beautiful time in human history, though. Well, American history. Because everybody agreed this was terrible. FCC chairman of a vast wasteland. That's what he called it. Some of the descriptions of that are the private market, run all by itself, led to repetitive programming that wasn't novel. It was just filled with ads. And it was completely dependent on things that could immediately be monetized. So just unfettered capitalism, right? All the programming. This is my cameo of Dan White. We were out camping not too long ago, last year, and this phrase really started to resonate with me. And it's just a really easy idea, but it's so hard in the world we live in right now to argue that there's anything other than a private market. There's just one set point. Everything needs to generate revenue, right? I would argue there are things that should exist that will not make profit. Is that a category of things? Okay. That's I might get my grants pulled for saying that. This is a radical idea in our society. I'm not even kidding, by the way. That is a radical idea. I stick with it. Sesame Street is the kind of thing that no one would make profit from. There's no way to monetize this thing in 1969. A couple years after that. It took a couple years to make it. And there are so many lessons in it that I would say are, if this group, sorry to pick on one faith community, but if we had a Torah, Games for Change, if we had a holy text, I would argue it should be Sesame Street. Here's why. It showed us at least these lessons. First one, use the dominant forms. There are no high media, high art, low art. It is the question, where is the public at? And now, the public are on games. Mobile, desktop, console, video games is the prominent media, right? That's why ESA is here. The other thing they did, and this is radical, and I'm not seeing anybody do this, you actually have to budget for researchers, significant amounts, and artists. AI will replace non-artists because symbol generation is easy. I have a computer science background, by the way, so I think very clearly in these ways. Real artists do something neat. They bring experience, love, heartache, loss, trauma. Machines, until they have those experiences, can't generate that stuff authentically in ways that you'll feel, and you know it. You have to hire real artists, and you have to pay them. And that's hard, because it's costly. Sesame Street did the craziest thing. They hired an ad guy, a weird Bestoke ad guy, who was literally insane. I mean, think of puppets and Muppets and voices and, this is bananas. I have never been in the room with a state department or a big company that says, let's do instructional design, step one, let's get some crazy people. You know what I mean? Let's get some really out of the box, street magicians, yeah, gin brewers, burlesque, like what would this group be? No, but you have to hire real artists, right? And this is fundamental to what they did. This idea of community in all its forms is radical right now. When I was thinking of Sesame Street, and I had this image up, and they're on the stoop, I was thinking about how radical it was to talk about, some city like kind of modeled after New York, architecturally and such. And I'm thinking about the city and this dense urban environment, and I just Googled census data, and the question was, how many people live in urban environments versus rural environments? Because I thought maybe it's like a better representation of America if you actually show cities. Because worldwide, you could make a case for dense urban environments being where the majority live. It wasn't as clear as that. So using census data, 80% of people in the United States live within urban environments, but it includes suburban environments. So I was a little disappointed, actually, because I'm like, oh, there's like a rational numerical reason why we would put it on a stoop. And then Mr. Rogers entered into my mind, and I'm like, oh, he had the suburban neighborhood where his mailman came over, and yeah, the police officer would come over, and the garbage collector would come over and hang out and talk and listen to records. And I realized that between these two shows, we saw real American community for 80% of the Americans, right? And the way they modeled it is radical. It wasn't just a group of people that liked each other. It was a public, like an actual public. You know you're in the public when you think, I don't know if I want to sit next to that person, but then you also think, I wonder if they look at me the same way, right? Libraries, buses, parks, right? These are some of the places you run into that. And I love that both of these shows showed that. Oscar the Grouch is kind of a jerk, but he's still part of our public. We still got to figure out how to deal with the guy, and he's kind of funny, actually. And then they were radically diverse. Monsters, letters, colors, like all moving into the neighborhood, right? What a vision of, well, democracy, right? And then the thing that really hits me, and like when I saw recently there's been 2 documentaries on Fred Rogers, and then a documentary called Street Gang on Sesame Street. Has anyone seen Street Gang? Okay, so second reading, like required. I make it like 6 minutes into this documentary and I start crying, and then it happens like every 7 minutes from that point on. Because anything I'm saying right now that's interesting, again, is not. It's not novel, it's all from these folks. The big topics meant, what happens when one of the actors dies? How do they handle it? And they've got a bunch of writers in the room thinking, how do we handle this? And what they did is they had Big Bird explain death. As a bunch of kids were like, well, is he coming back? It's one of the most amazing programs you'll ever see. Fred Rogers, amazing scene. Keep in mind, the civil rights movement is like full bore right now, right, while they're producing this. Vietnam is like, right, we're right there. Civil rights movement, what does Fred Rogers do? They've got a little wading pool. It's like one of those little $5 plastic things. And while there's protests happening and people are getting up in arms, he sits with his neighbor and he puts his feet in the pool next to a black man. It was the most radical, possible, kind, gentle protest. And it showed that maybe we can be in the pool together. Oh my gosh, it's like these guys, let's do it. Okay, 4 simple principles. So nonetheless, I'm at a university, I make video games. I used to make video games. Now my wife makes all the video games. I think about stuff and write grants. We're pretty good at it. We've made a lot of games, which means we've failed like a lot of ways. We're dozens and dozens of games in. We've got some that have done really well, like Headlines and High Water won 2 awards at Games for Change a couple of years ago. It's a game about journalism. And if you watch our field day philosophy, you'll see that the way we talk about topics is coming back to those 2 key civic problems that we have. So when I'm thinking about the emergency of epistemology, we've got like a theory of change to fix it with games, best we can. I mean, I make games, so you use a hammer, you know. But if you look at this game doesn't say, this game confronts the idea that there's fake news and real news. Now, I know there's some great games that do that, and that's illiteracy and all that, but we wanted to get into the question of, well, how is news made? Like, the people that make news, how do they do it? What are the processes, tools, epistemologies? What are the discourses they use? How do they know when it's good, right? So we interviewed journalists over periods of months. We had everybody from New York Times to like Mashable on that panel, and we ran iteration after iteration until we knew that we had captured their epistemic frame, and they all signed off, and they start saying things like, yep, that's what my life looks like every day. You captured the conflicts. I've got a lot of research on this if you want to know more about how I think about this and study this. It's a repeatable process. Similar with a game called Wake, it was nominated. We got beat by Fablevision, wherever, if they're here. They whooped us, really wanted it, still hurts. My wife produced the other one, I produced this one, it's a thing. This one had 10 times the budget. Same thing, but it's about science. How do scientists construct knowledge? Like, what does it mean to do science, right? What's interesting about this is it handles the hard topics. Within 5 minutes of this game, you're going to be introduced to the fact that you and your mom have a complex relationship, and your sister just died, and you're going through a trauma, and your family is trying to deal with the fact that they're scientists, and there's this tension between being in love with the universe, fearing the universe, and also just being scared day to day. And it's a story of a young woman coming into her own. So we have snuck actual feelings into science class. It's also the first science game I'm aware of that has nightmares and psychoanalytic moments, which are really important to the whole purpose of the game. Last one I'll mention is Bloom. This is a game about the complex systems of economics, phosphorus, farming, cities, rural watersheds. And instead of having simple left and righty kind of answers, raise taxes, lower taxes, we work with real scientists, and what real scientists will always tell you is that it's complicated. There are contexts. So what you learn through this game is a set of surgical policies at exactly the right time can jumpstart new sustainable markets, and will both solve much of the water pollution problem at the same time as adding more wealth to the farming industry. And it's cool working with people that spend their whole lives coming up with solutions like that via math. So those are the kinds of games we make, and it works. This is a map of where people play our games. It's basically equivalent to where there's electricity. We have millions and millions of players every year, and we have some really cool design processes that are why this works. One of them is Game Up. Rest in peace. Game Up was the infrastructure for teachers to discover games. Every teacher we work with used Game Up, and for some reason that I will never fully understand, it was not in the market's best interest to keep this resource alive, even though it costs very little, and we have a gap. Now, along the way of getting Game Up kind of numbers, we were able to do research like A/B testing different scripts in video games, developing new ways to visualize progression, developing new methods like epistemic network analysis that can be used to compare different groups of players. And at the end, what I realized is that the public makes way for the private. And what I mean by that is all these public funds that we were using to develop these new games, and the infrastructure that allowed us to do research, and the papers that we published openly, and the tools that we made to be able to do that research that is all open source and free for everyone to use, it is a goldmine of private profitability if you want to add value to it. The public makes way for the private. It has to come first. It has to be established. So we've got two big offerings. One of them is open game data. I don't know how many millions of dollars we've spent on this. We've got a community of 150 researchers who are the top people internationally in educational data mining, learning analytics, just any sort of new methodology where you're combining human and machine intelligence, and they're all together, and we've built the infrastructure to do it, and we've done it in a reasonable way that is morally sound, because we actually have an institutional review board and an ethics committee, because I'm at a university. The other thing we've done is created a distribution network to replace what BrainPop dropped. We got our launch, as well as New Mexico State University and others, because BrainPop had an open door for us to publish with them. That does not exist. There is no public media entity that's willing to do that right now, so we needed to solve the problem. Vault will publish your games if you just meet a few simple requirements. So we've got these two things we're offering. It's an MVP, it's a prototype of a new public media-like entity. I'll show you some of the possible names for it, but we're really trying to offer these two things. Like an agent publisher role, we help you get grants, and we help you reach millions of people. Part two is when you're making games, you can integrate with us. We can show you processes for doing data-driven design that's iterative, so you make better games. And then during deploy, we're working with partners like IEEE that will make these data sets open, reliable, and available in an archival sense, so that you can continue to prove that they work over long periods of time. And every day, we get new tools coming out of really cool research labs that push the field of what we can learn from game data forward. But detecting affect, understanding changes in time and cognition, understanding formats of the ways people are playing your games, understanding intersections between multivariate outcomes. Now I get to write experiments like the one that we just did, which is I'm studying 243 versions of a game narrative across 5 dimensions of narrative. We've got a survey of values and interests that the students do. So now we get to answer the question, what narratives work for which kids in which ways, empirically, using 1 million kids to figure that out. It's an amazing time to be in public media. Okay, so this is the thing I'm proposing, and then my time's out. I think it's called something like a co-op for public games. These are actual potential names, by the way. A co-op for public games. Co-op because we want it to be deeply democratic and owned by the people that use it. And I want to protect it against our own self-interest and our own personal issues. I want to make sure that I can never corrupt it, because I'm a selfish jerk. At the same time, national infrastructure, that might be it as well. If you want to hear about this and help us design it, go to opengamedata.io, sign up, and we're going to be running listening groups, like the one we're going to run in 10 minutes. We're going to do a town hall. Brendan and I are going to facilitate. He's got a gold hat. That makes it easy. Because Games for Change is really invested in this idea of a new kind of system, a co-op for public games. So thank you for your time, and yeah.